Hi grade 5s, welcome to our next recorded math lesson. Our title today is Comparing Fractions. Our learning intentions and success criteria are: I am learning to develop number sense so that I can demonstrate an understanding of fractions. I'll know I have it when I can compare two fractions using equivalent fractions. So I think we figured out that the easiest way to compare fractions is using a number line like this. But unfortunately, you're not going to always have a number line in your back pocket. So you need to have some alternative ways to compare fractions. So before we get into that, there's a few definitions that you're going to need to know. You probably remember talking about factors and multiples when we were doing our multiplication unit. So this is just a little reminder. Factors are all of the numbers that you can multiply to get a specific number. So all of the factors of 24 are 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 12, and 24. Because you can do 1 times 24 equals 24, 2 times 12 equals 24, 3 times 8 is 24, and 4 times 6 is 24. Multiples are the products of a number that you multiply together. So some of the multiples of 2 would be 2, 4, 6, 8, or 10. Depending on what you multiply by 2. Then we get to talking about the lowest common multiple. The lowest multiple that is the same for two specific numbers. So the lowest common multiple of 2 and 6 is 6, because you can multiply 2 times 3 and you can multiply 1 times 6. Okay, so I'd like us to compare the following fractions, and the way that we want to do that is often to find the lowest common multiple, but there are some ways to get around that, like the little tricks that I gave you during our last lesson. For example, on this first one, 1/2 compared to 1/3, or 1/2 compared to 1/3, we know that anytime the numerator is a 1, that the smaller denominator is the larger fraction. So 1/2 is bigger than 1/3. And if you were to draw that out, and we were to make that into, obviously, if you could do this a little bit neater than I could, that would be easier to see, but 1/2 takes up more space than 1/3 does. Okay. The next one was another one of our tricks. When the numerator and the denominator have a difference of 1, the larger numerals is the larger fraction. So 7/8 is larger than 5/6. Okay, the next one is a pretty simple one to remember as well. If you have the same denominator, then the larger fraction is the one that has the larger numerator. And if we were again to draw this one out, I'll try and make it a little neater this time. We were to have 4 pieces that were all the same size, and we colored in 2 of those pieces, it would take up less space than if we colored in 3 of those pieces. Okay, good. Okay, the next one is one where we're going to have to find the lowest common multiple. So if we were to look at just the denominator, 6 and 12, if you're comfortable with your multiplication facts, you'll know that the lowest common multiple would be 12, because 6 times 2 equals 12, and 1 times 12 equals 12. If you're not comfortable with your multiplication facts, you can always use a multiplication chart while you get used to it. So what we're going to do now is, we don't have to do anything with this fraction because it's already got a denominator of 12. But we have to make this fraction have a denominator of 12. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to multiply it by 2, because that's how we get a denominator of 12. So 4/6, we're going to times both by 2, and it equals 8/12. So now we're able to compare that to 7/12, and we can see that the first fraction that's equivalent to 8/12 is larger. Okay, and then lastly, we've got 2 fractions where, again, we're going to have to find the lowest common multiple. But in some cases, the lowest common multiple is just going to be the denominators multiplied together. So in this case, the lowest common multiple of 4 and 5 is 20, 4 times 5. Okay, so we're going to have to multiply both fractions. So 2 over 4 and 3 over 5. The first one we're going to multiply by 5 because 4 times 5 is 20. And that gives us 10 over 20. And the second one we're going to multiply by 4 because 5 times 4 gives us 20. And that gives us 12 over 20. So we know that 3 over 5 is the larger fraction. Another way to compare is by using a diagram. If you're able to make two pieces the same size, and that's important because that represents one whole, and if you split it into pieces to match your fraction, then you can compare the size. So I made my first rectangle in 5 pieces and my second rectangle in 10 pieces, but I made the rectangle itself the same size for both. So for the first one, I'm going to color in 3 pieces because that's 3 over 5. Okay, and for the second one, I'm going to color in 5 pieces. And now I can very clearly see here that the first fraction is larger because I've colored in more area. So there we go, I've compared it. And so your worksheet for today is comparing fractions. It's on Google Classroom and it is due tomorrow.